The Rings of Power. What to say? The costumes look fine. The production quality is good. The sets look great. But all of these things should be, given the estimated price tag of $1 billion for the first series. None of the acting stands out to me as either notably good or bad, with possibly the exception of Ishmael Cruz Cordova as Arondir. Now, the elves in the Peter Jackson films, they did tend towards the stoic, but god damn has he taken it to an extreme. The man barely emotes in 2 hours. On the flip side, Nazanin Boniardi gives a good, if slightly understated performance as Bronwyn. You may remember her being drop-dead gorgeous in the series Homeland, and she does well playing a smitten healer as she tries to sell a smouldering, budding love affair with an elf as animated as a sideboard. Morfydd Clark has a look that is believable for a young Cate Blanchett, and those are big boots to fill. Sadly, the characterisation is so different between the two actresses, it's hard to even see them as being the same character. So it looks like Tolkien. It kind of looks like the Peter Jackson films. What's missing from Tolkien is the mind and the soul. The ethics that Tolkien put into his work seem largely absent. Themes like brotherhood, self-sacrifice, that even the smallest and most humble can make a big contribution, perseverance, platonic love, loyalty, the affection for the pre-industrial lifestyle and a love of nature, nostalgia, these are mostly missing. The soul of Lord of the Rings is missing. Despite the cosmetic features that make it look like the Peter Jackson films, this does not feel like the Peter Jackson films. It doesn't even feel like Tolkien's work. I'd liken it to the film Hellraiser, where murderous Uncle Frank turns up at the end wearing Kirsty's dad's skin. It looks like her dad, but everything beneath the skin feels wrong. If you've never watched Hellraiser, do that before you watch The Rings of Power. It's a great movie. Andrew Robinson and Claire Higgins knock it out of the park. The music in Lord of the Rings also didn't really make much of an emotional impact for me. And this is in startling contrast to the music from the Peter Jackson films, where the music carried a lot of the water and set in the right tone. So The Rings of Power is, I would say, below average, but it looks even worse when it's stood next to the Peter Jackson films. Episode 1 starts out with young Galadriel, who's being bullied. She makes a toy boat out of paper for her bullies for some reason. And how did it turn into a swan? Magic, I guess. I think I'm going to be saying that a lot watching this. The other kids follow it downriver, throwing rocks at it until it sinks. They just seem to hate her for no reason. What has she done to be so disliked? It's maybe the writers trying to get her over. There's never any motivation given for the bullies, they're just props. This could have gone better for Galadriel, but it could have gone a lot worse. Flagrant and provocative sailing of a paper boat like that is an invitation for Pennywise the Clown to show up. Morgoth destroys the elves' big glowing magic trees for reasons. Magic, I guess. And my god, are they going through the backstory quickly. Somewhere in there they gloss over that a sun appears from somewhere. Magic, I guess. The elves are annoyed by the destruction of their big magic trees and leave their continent Valinor to go and fight Morgoth. Did they all go? I have no idea. They're skipping through this rarely fast. Hundreds of years of war pass in a montage, and Galadriel's brother is killed during the war with Morgoth. And Morgoth's second-in-command Sauron is still missing. I can't help but feel that we missed a more interesting story in those several hundred years of war, but never mind. Galadriel, standing over the body of her dead brother, vows to track down Sauron. We go forward many more years, and Galadriel and a group of elves are climbing an ice wall. Jeff Bezos really did want this to be like Game of Thrones, didn't he? And this scene is really silly. They're climbing without ropes for some reason, up a fragile wall made of ice. At one point Galadriel jumps and sinks her dagger into the ice as a hold. This is a really good way of simultaneously blunting your weapon and trying to kill yourself when the ice gives way. The weapon's magic, I guess. She hangs there with no tension in her arms and shoulders, so it looks like the actress is just standing on something. I guess this is supposed to make her look like a badass. In reality, it just makes her look like a bad leader. At the top of the ice cliff, one of the elves suggests that they turn back. They've apparently been searching for years for Sauron, and at this point they're disobeying the orders given to them by the king. He suggests they make camp and head back in the morning. as they're losing light. Galadriel will not listen and has them march through the night in the middle of a blizzard. Yes, that's right. She orders them to march through the night, in the dark, over a mountain, on ice, in a blizzard. It's all fun and games until someone steps into a crevasse or someone's metal armour freezes to their skin. It's like she's trying to get herself and her men killed. They try to make her look driven. Frankly, she just looks irresponsible. At the back, one of her men collapses from exhaustion and the cold. Another man tries to tell her to stop. She replies with, "We go on." It takes pleading to make her stop, so yes, she almost left a man to die, and for some reason she seems to be having problems with discipline. There's a thunderstorm that lights up the sky, and they find what they're looking for. A base that Sauron allegedly used to shelter after the war. It makes for a striking scene, but it's another victory of style over substance. This was Sauron's rallying point after the war, on top of this massive mountain. It's not a great spot for a rallying point if all your soldiers have to climb that sodding ice wall. Sauron will be lucky if 10% of his orcs made it alive. I don't think much thought went into the making of this show. Inside Sauron's abandoned base, it looks very good. It looks abandoned and invokes the scene from Lord of the Rings in the Mines of Moria. It even came with a free troll. Galadriel says, this is where the orcs gathered after Morgoth's defeat. But how does she know? She just knows these things. One elf says that he's cold and that his hands are past feeling. Galadriel replies, no. This place is so evil that our torches give off no warmth. The dialogue is awful in this series. They try for Tolkien-esque dialogue. What they end up with is pure ham. Galadriel punches a hole in a fake wall, finding a workshop and the mark of Sauron. She reveals it by pouring water onto it, on what looks like an anvil. Look if that water didn't freeze in those sub-zero temperatures in the middle of a blizzard. Maybe the flask is magic too. Galadriel says this was a sign for the orcs to follow. Again, how does she know? And if it was, why the hell did they seal the door up? Just no thought went into this. Then the troll turns up and starts smashing her men around. And this is where it lost me. Galadriel vaulting off of a sword. She flies around, cutting the troll down in seconds while her men stand around and watch. Completely impotent. It reminds me of Rey Skywalker jumping over that TIE fighter in mid-flight. She turns her back on the troll multiple times but still wins easily. Galadriel wants to carry on further north, but her men have had it. I'm not even sure how they survived the troll. Inside their armour they'd be elf puree. They all draw their swords and put them on the ground. They're going home with or without her. I'm not sure why she cares. At no point has she needed them at all. They're lucky she didn't kill them. She's shown very little interest in their survival up to this point. I don't know why they didn't wait until she was asleep and leave. Instead, they put their weapons down theatrically, so if she tries to kill them as deserters or mutineers, they're now defenceless. We cut to the Harfoots, with hearts as big as their feet. I don't know if all of the Harfoots are even going for Irish accents, because if so, some are so bad I don't even know what accent they were going for. I mean, I don't object to an Irish accent, I actually kind of like it on a woman. But if they're an insular community, shouldn't they all have the same accent? For an insular group that shuns contact with outsiders, they're also incredibly diverse. Insular groups tend towards homogeneity. It strains immersion, and maybe they'll explain it at some point. They could have come from a different community or something. Maybe Harfoot genetics work very differently to humans. It is fantasy after all. The Harfoots also raised eyebrows with at least one Irish journalist that I read in the magazine GQ. He was unsure whether or not to be offended by the Harfoots. He noted that the Harfoots in Rings of Power were itinerant, grubby, hobos essentially, eating snails and berries. In his words, the Harfoots are leprechaun-like savages, full of heart but entirely lacking in brain power. And with their spotty Irish accents, he seemed concerned that the show was in danger of perpetuating negative stereotypes about the Irish. Could things get any worse for this show? The quality of the attempts at Irish accents are really very spotty. On several occasions, Lenny Henry's attempt at an Irish accent sounded more Jamaican. What even are the Harfords? What are this strange, insular, cosmopolitan group of people? Also, I'm quite jealous of their blackberry patch.